Welcome to the Bucher and Friends podcast, co-starring 10-year NBA center Ryan Hollins.
Couple pump fakes, leans in, shot blocked by Ryan Hollins. Hollins sent that into the third row.
6 rebounds and 8 assists.
Hollins climbs the stairs.
Down the floor. Ryan Hollins! He is the high jumper!
That's what I want to see. Give me some gunpowder and throw the hammer down.
And now, here is your host,
Let's send it over to Ric Bucher.
Ric Bucher.
Welcome to another episode of Bucher and Hollins, subsidiary of Bucher and Friends, part of the United We Cast network. I'm Ric Bucher. You can find my stuff on Bleacher Report. You can find me on Twitter at Ric Bucher. And he is Ryan Hollins. You can find him at The Ryan Hollins on Twitter and on ESPN TV, NBA Radio, Clippers broadcasts, etc. You can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at Bucher Friends. All right, we're not going to hesitate. We're not going to waste any time here because we got a lot to get to. The trade deadline has passed. I'm going to ask you just big picture because I actually saw somebody, and sometimes you get, dissonance when it comes to social media. You get a wrong take. Somebody said it wasn't that interesting of a trade deadline. I thought it was amazing. I thought that the East, everybody was trying to load up with pieces. You saw the Sacramento Kings making a run at a playoff spot and trying to add a variety of pieces. Maybe we didn't see the big blockbuster move as far as Anthony Davis, but we saw the Philadelphia 76ers, added Jonathan Simmons, moved Markelle Fultz, ended that saga. I thought, Ryan, I was entertained. I thought there was plenty to go around. Not monstrous moves, but a lot of solid ones that could shift some dynamics here.
Well, the reality is that the fireworks that we wanted was Anthony Davis and LeBron action going on with the Pelicans, and we didn't get that. So if you want to say that nothing went on, that would be the telltale. And unfortunately, Rick, like we talked about in our pre-NBA rankings, the tanking started. And it's a little later than normal, but it's right at the deadline, and people have just made their choice, whether they're in or they're out.
Right.
And you see a number of teams getting out while the getting is good and saying, you know what, let's see, there's a race to win it all, and there's another race to lose it all.
Right. Well, and we saw the Clippers, clearly, they backed out of a race for a playoff spot, right?
It was crazy. The Clippers might limp into it. I don't see how much they're going to really lose still. Like, this is crazy.
Here's the big question for you. Without getting Anthony Davis and with the waters poisoned with all the young fellas, do you still see the Lakers as being in the playoffs?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're not out the playoffs. Don't worry about that because their competition is the Kings. Assuming that the Clippers just fall out of it. But the one thing about LeBron had more chaos. LeBron had a lot more chaos last year. This is mild compared to what he had to deal with. We forget, Rick. Rick, help me out here. You remember everything that was going on just this was last year, Rick. This wasn't years ago.
Right. Yeah, well, they changed the team up. I mean, they started with one team and then they went to another team, and we had Tyronn Lue who was ailing. Yeah, you had plenty of drama. And here's the reality is, this is what's different. The reality is LeBron is comfortable in chaos. When things are quiet, he stirs them up. He likes it that way. The only difference is that I don't think that this was orchestrated. I don't think that this was intentional. Like, I want to stir the pot. I want to make this a uncomfortable situation. I think it was just a result of not getting what he thought he was going to get. But so here's my question. So you're just assuming that the Lakers are going to jump in and take that 8th spot? Do you have any other changes when it comes to the playoff picture?
No, I mean the Clippers they were a team that kind of just was like, you know what are we fighting? But like what's crazy is like Clippers very well could still be in it because.
Okay, but if they're in it, then the Lakers are not. Because I don't see anybody else falling out.
Who's in that 7th spot right now?
Utah. Utah's not falling off.
Utah's rolling. Utah's rolling right now. I don't know. It's interesting.
San Antonio's not falling off.
I would assume that the Clippers would fall off. I would really assume that. From the moves they made, I don't think they made moves. Oh, snap. When did Jermichael Green and Garrett Temple get to the Clippers? I missed that one.
Yeah, there was a number of deals done at the deadline, smaller deals that just the typical. It's like lining up for the car wash and people getting their cars done before 6 p.m. and the place shuts down.
Oh gosh, you're right about that.
The Sixers get Tobias Harris. The Raptors get Marc Gasol. We're glad to see him go to a team that matters. Which of those teams improved more by the acquisition?
I'm going to go out and say Philly. You get some positionless basketball with Tobias, and they're a really big, versatile team. You add that. But even more so because when the offseason comes, either Jimmy or Tobias is going to be leaving, and you probably have an option like a safety blanket to keep one of those guys on your roster because they're going to be commanding a lot of money. And they may want to stay, they may want to go, but now you got the options. Because if Jimmy left after you traded Covington and Sarge, now at least you got something in return.
Is there a trade that you didn't like? Is there one that really bothers you where you say, that was not a good move? Whether it was for cap space or whether it was for we're trying to upgrade ourselves, that you just thought, that's not getting what you maybe think you're getting.
I thought right now Dell Demps was spiteful and silly. I thought that he was just sticking it to the Lakers, sticking it to Anthony Davis. You take the guy off the video, then he says he's still going to play, and then now you're kind of just got this awkward situation that's going to loom over your entire season.
Yeah.
And then you don't move Drew Holiday, but you move Mirotic, which is weird, which lets me know you're just letting the season go. So you could have got a lot of young assets because if half of what that Lakers proposed deal was really on the table, you get something, and now you get in dangerous territory where, what if Anthony Davis gets more and more angry or upset? They go to trade, and it's not just his dad speaking out; it's him saying, "I'm not going to play in Boston. I'm not going to play for these certain teams. So you can try to throw me in the mix or not, but I'm not going."
Well, no. Rich Paul told me he would go. He would go, but he said, "We'll go and we'll play the season out, and we'll play hard next year if we go to Boston. But we're telling you right now, we're not re-upping in Boston. You're going to be renting us for 6 months. Whatever you give up for us, just know that." That's going to be a forfeiture because we're not signing an extension. Now, whether that discourages the Celtics or not, that remains to be seen. Still remains to be seen what they ultimately give up. The most curious deal for me was Markelle Fultz to the Orlando Magic for Jonathan Simmons and a first-round pick, which actually belongs to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So it's not a great first-round pick, but you're helping Philadelphia had to move Markelle Fultz. They could say all they want. We'll keep him. It was clearly not a fit. You couldn't play Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid together. Markelle Fultz needs to have the ball in his hands. Well, guess what? So does Ben Simmons. And ideally, Joel Embiid is getting a lot of touches, and you're playing through him a lot. And is Markelle a spot-up shooter? Is he a off-the-ball scorer? No. So the Magic, they get to take a flyer. And you give Jonathan Simmons back. I think he bolsters Philly in terms of what they need. But the first-round pick? I don't care that it's the Thunders. You're the Magic. You can't give up first-round picks. That's your only hope of unearthing a superstar in Orlando. You're not going to get a free agent that way. So I have great issue with them doing that. All right. How are you feeling about the Pelicans now and where they stand? Anthony Davis still being there, and now the league coming down and saying, hey, by the way, you can't shelve him. You're going to have to play him. And yet, you know that they're looking to move him during the offseason. You got an injury-prone Anthony Davis. This is all kinds of potential problematic for the New Orleans Pelicans.
Like I said, it was just stupid. It was just stupid. And then, I don't know if that was you that brought up the point that, like, is he going to sit out until the trade deadline? Is he going to keep sitting out? Because, he's got to show that he's healthy to play in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain number of games, but hey, I tell you one darn thing. AD would fight through a couple injuries just to get out there and play. And, more so they kind of just manage the load because he played hard. Hey, bro, he ain't about to fight through nothing. I tell you that much.
So, but you know what? That's not the worst thing. I mean, once you get past the All-Star game, Anthony Davis deciding maybe he's going to shut it down. That's going to be the interesting part is, does he shut it down on his own volition? Or does he say, hey, screw it. I want to play. And this is where the spitefulness could become an issue. Like, is Anthony Davis going to play to spite the Pelicans? Or can they find a way to get back on the same page and make this happen? That's ultimately going to be the challenge. Now, they moved Nikola Mirotic to the Bucks. And we talked about these variety of trades. Like, it's funny how the East teams, the Bucks, the Sixers, the Raptors, all of them added pieces. All of
Milwaukee.
them, they all bolstered themselves. They picked up Stanley Johnson too. The Bucks did. With all the changes, with all the additions, I feel like they all got stronger. I don't think that they necessarily changed the order or the power rankings when I look at the East. And I still am of the mind that the Milwaukee Bucks, as the number one seed, if they hold that, are ripe for an earlier exit than you expect from the number one seed. I still don't see the Milwaukee Bucks in the conference finals, even with the addition of a guy like Mirotic and Stanley Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, I like Toronto more in that. I mean, Milwaukee does not. They're the least. I mean, I think Philly and Toronto really improved what they had. But outside of that, I don't see much. It's not much I'm going to make a case for now, Rick.
So how far do you see Philly rising? Right now, they are the 5th seed with the pieces that they added. Tobias Harris, Boban, Jonathan Simmons. Do you see them taking off? Because here's the thing. I mean, when you add pieces like that, and it's not like it's a central piece, but there can sometimes be a period of adjustment for everybody. And you lose a couple games that maybe if you were still rolling with the same crew you had at the beginning of the year, you wouldn't, because roles adjust. Do you see them, jumping past the Celtics, who are right now the 4th seed? Or, I mean, obviously the Pacers at 36-19, we can see them falling out of having home court advantage. Although they've quietly won 4 in a row with Oladipo out. So it's not as if they're spiraling.
No, not at all. I mean, it's still a toss-up. You still like Boston. And I guess it'd be safe to say to answer the first team that gels. But I think Marc Gasol is better for chemistry in Toronto than any of those guys. But, Philly made the moves for Tobias Harris because Tobias Harris can play off the ball. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really what they needed. And then they got a lot of depth, these are going to be some dog fights, man.
Who do you think's stronger right now? Do you still give it to the West?
Are you really asking that? Yes. Yes. Although I'll say 1 through 4. 1 through 4 right now, I'm taking the East.
Well, that's what I meant. Why are you saying that's a crazy question?
Because of Golden State, bro. Golden State just trumps all. You know what I'm saying? Are you excited to talk about 2nd and 3rd best?
Nuggets are only a game and a half behind the Warriors.
You don't believe in the Nuggets.
I don't believe in the Nuggets. You're right.
You don't believe in the Nuggets.
You know what struck me though? Like, who a guy that I do generally believe in is Jarrett Jack, because he was part of the reestablishing an identity for the Warriors. He came in with Mark Jackson and with Carl Landry, and they said, "Hey, we're not satisfied being an also-ran in the West. We're gonna go for it." And that fired up Clay and Steph in a way that nothing else had. And lo and behold, they did. Got to the playoffs, upset the Denver Nuggets. Put the Spurs on notice that the Warriors were coming. And Jarrett said, "This Denver Nuggets team reminds me a lot of the Warriors team I was on." And I was like, man, I'm not feeling that. But I respect Jarrett, and he was part of that Warriors team. What do you think he's seen? Because I think you're on my side. I think you agree with me that the Nuggets.
Maybe they have fun. They're deep. They work hard. They're excited. It's a special year. I don't know. I'm searching like you're searching right now.
Well, actually, if it is exactly like that first Warriors team, then they're a second round and out team. So maybe that's the extent of it. But look, with everything that the East have added, and we'll ultimately see how meaningful the additions are. But you got the Nuggets as the number 2 team in the Western Conference. Then you got Oklahoma City, who I like more than most people. Then you got the Trailblazers in 4th, and as it stands right now, they'd be up with the Rockets in the first round, and I'm not sure I like that for Portland. And then San Antonio, Utah, the Clippers, where, I don't know, I look at both conferences, and they're soft after the first 4. And the first 4 in the East look more formidable to me. I'd even say the first 5 look more formidable to me. That's why I raised the question, and that's why I've said since the beginning of the year, next champion is coming out of the Eastern Conference. You heard it here first, and you heard it here.
Who cares about next? Who cares about that?
What?
Who cares about who's next after Golden State? Who cares?
Well, you're still assuming that Golden State's going to win it all.
Yeah, they are, Rick. They are. I hate to even, give our listeners no hope, but they are. I
don't think they are. I still don't think they are. As much as Boogie has been better in a multitude of ways than I expected. By the way, you were asking earlier, I think, about the Garrett Temple and JaMychal Green going to the Clippers. They got them for Avery Bradley going to Memphis.
Salary dump.
Yeah. Yet another salary dump. That's probably the best backup that Mike Conley has ever had. I don't know that you can play those two guys together in the backcourt. It's an awfully small backcourt, although Avery plays bigger than he actually is. All right. One of the other things we have to get to is the fact that the All-Star captains, LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo, picked their teams. And Kevin Durant was the first pick, taken by LeBron, and Giannis took Steph Curry as
I thought it was
the number 2.
No, you're right.
So I'm just looking at the two teams. Here's the starting lineup for Team LeBron. LeBron, KD, Kyrie Irving, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, who, by the way, was the 7th pick. And the starters for Team Giannis are Giannis, Steph, Joel Embiid, Paul George, Kemba Walker. Let's just start there with the 2 starting 5s. Whose team do you like more?
LeBron whooped Giannis' butt, kind of like I whooped your butt when it comes to these drafts.
See, I was just going to say that I don't know that either one of their teams beats the team that I selected, but I would say that Giannis trended toward me, and you know the heart of it is Joel Embiid. It's how you feel about Joel Embiid. And for me, being the most dominant big man in the game right now trumps everything else. You can have all your small. You picked all the small forwards. You picked Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, although I had LeBron James, so you didn't corner the market exactly. You know what? Actually, when I look at it, why are you saying that LeBron's team is probably closer to mine than it is to yours? Then I had Harden. I had Kyrie.
I whooped your butt.
And I had
that.
LeBron. I had 3 of LeBron's 5.
Now look at the
Embiid.
bench. Look at the reserves, because these guys are swapping out platoon style. Look at the reserves that your man Giannis has. That's cool. You want to stay with the starters. What happens when you get to the bench?
Well, here's the problem. The first problem is he picked Chris Middleton because he's his teammate as his first reserve. So he put himself behind the 8 ball right there. Then we got D'Angelo Russell. Yeah, it's not a good.
It's not close.
It's not
like ours. It's not close.
It's not a good. What do you think about Bradley Beal being the last pick? That really surprises me.
Well, what happens is the guys who go last, they know that they're not going to make a big fuss. You know, they're not going to, at that point, it's like, oh, they're not going to make a big deal if they go last. So, you know, we'll take him last. He's a good dude. He's not going to fuss.
Well, Bradley Beal was the guy who actually didn't like the fact that they were televising it. He almost dared them to make him last. So maybe they just did him a solid and said, "Oh, really? Okay. Well, that solves that. We'll just make you last."
It was Kyle Lowry who was last.
Are you sure about that?
No, you're right. No, you're right. Lowry was 21st. He was 22nd because they flipped order.
Yeah, they were the last two picks. Lowry and Beal were the last two picks. But
yeah, you pick as bad as Giannis.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, look at his reserves.
Look,
those guys are on par with
you can say that Giannis picked a bad team or at least a bad bench without saying that I pick as bad as Giannis. Like you don't have to equate those two. You can drum Giannis without dragging me into it.
That's hard for me to do. That's hard for me to do.
Yeah, but how do you feel about the fact that LeBron's team is basically all the guys that are prospective free agents this summer? Like, go down the line. They're all KD, Kyrie, Kawhi. In fact, James Harden being picked 7th is largely because Giannis is in competition with him for MVP, and he's not a free agent. So LeBron doesn't really have any interest. AD is his first pick off the bench. Klay Thompson. I mean, go down the line. And then he didn't pick Ben Simmons at first, but they swapped. By the way, what do you make of Giannis being willing to trade Ben Simmons for Russell Westbrook? And that Westbrook was the 16th pick, if I'm not mistaken.
We're not doing trades. Uncle Russ ain't going nowhere. And I know that's LeBron's guy, so maybe LeBron is just saying, you know, by default, I messed up. I should have got Simmons.
Right.
You know, maybe that's it. We got to take care of our own.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I value, if you ask me who would I rather have Russ or Ben? Give me Russ. Give me Russ all day. That said, I'm with you. We're not trading here. Yeah, I know he's a clutch guy. Come on. We got to be bigger than that. Right?
No, you got to trade. He's willing to trade. Come on, bro. He's willing to trade. He got to make up for that bench somehow.
Dude, you're all over the map. All right. How do you like about? I like that they added Wade and Nowitzki. I think that's a nice touch.
Yeah, I love problem that. With that? No, I love that. Where's D Rose at now?
He's going to be chilling. He'll be in the Bahamas.
Well, I guess he's not retiring after the season, so I.
Oh yeah. They didn't have to. They didn't.
Yeah, these guys are literally like this is it.
Yeah.
Excellent move. Adam just gets things right, bro. He just gets them right. It's
a really nice touch. It's what separates him when it comes to being a commissioner, for sure. All right. So the other thing that we generally do on Fridays is we pick the games for Friday night. And right now there are only 4 lines up. So let's run through this. I got to get my scorecard. I've been bragging about how well we have been doing and how well I have been doing. And you accused me of only noting it when I do well and you do poorly. So
that's the only time you talk about it.
Well, then I shouldn't talk about last week because I had my worst week by far.
Ever?
And you ever. And you absolutely kicked my ass. Now, I will say this. Vegas was very, very good because there were a couple of games that swung by a point or a half a point. That was the difference. So they set the lines in a very strategic place. And I was on the wrong side in every instance. And that's what really hurt me. I was also a little sloppy on a couple of the picks. I think I got full of myself. That might have been it. I went 2-7-1. You went 6-3-1. So our tie, we were previously tied with 125 wins. I had 92 losses. You had 94. I haven't done the math, but you've jumped ahead of me again, so I have some work to do. So let's get after it. All right, so the Cleveland Cavaliers are visiting the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards are giving 10 points, and the over-under is 220. The Wizards at this point are tanking and tanking mightily. I'm actually going to take the Cavs, and I'm going to take the 10 points. And on the over-under, I am going to go under. As much as I don't know how much defense is going to be played, I also don't know how much scoring is going to be done. So I'm going to go Cleveland, take the 10 points, and go under.
What they gave? So is Cleveland getting 10? The Wizards are getting 10.
Cleveland is getting 10 points. So
okay, I'll take that from Cleveland, and then I'm going under. I said, oh, okay, I'm reading this thing wrong. I'm like, are you kidding me?
All right. Yeah, the Wizards are bad. They're not that bad where they're getting 10 points from Cleveland. The Knicks are visiting the Detroit Pistons. The Knicks are getting 8.5 points, and the over-under is 206. Where are you going to go with that?
I'm going to go over, and I'm going to go with the Knicks right here.
Ooh. Think they can play them within 8.5. Well, they had the big blockbuster move. How much does that really change them? You know what? I'm going to go Detroit because Detroit's still trying to get after it. So I'll give New York the 8.5. The Bulls are visiting the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets are giving the Bulls 8.5, and the over-under is 224. How much is Otto Porter going to help the Chicago Bulls? How much is that going to rejuvenate them, make them feel good? Now they're past the trade deadline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I like the way the Nets are playing. Although I don't know that Greg Monroe is really going to change the dynamic significantly. Screw it. I'm going to go Bulls. I'm going to take the 8.5, and I am going to go under the 224.
I'm going to go Brooklyn, and then I'm going under. Very confident with this.
Especially on the under, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you on that. All right. Last one that we have to pick from for the lines that are out. The Miami Heat are visiting the refortified Sacramento Kings, and the Kings are giving up 2.5 points to Miami, and the over-under is 219. This is tricky. The over-under is tricky. So I'm going to let you go first.
I'm going to go Kings, and I'm going to go under right here.
Yeah, Miami likes to really drag it down, don't they? Although the Kings and the Kings at home, they like to play fast. And now they're adding Harrison Barnes. They gotten the green light from Vlade Divac to say, hey, we're going for it. We're going to try to make something happen here. So what did you say? You're going sack and you're going under. I am going to go sack, but I'm going to go over. In large part because I need to make up some ground. So I can't pick all the same with you. All right, so that's it for this episode of Bucher and Holland, subsidiary of Bucher and Friends, part of the United WeCast network. Keep in mind, bucherandfriends.com, we have a link there to a survey. It'd take you a couple minutes, but if you go there and you fill out the survey, you'll be eligible to win a $50 gift card to Amazon, courtesy of Bucher and Friends. Also, check out the other podcasts on the network. That is Get Some by comedian actor Gary Owen and Age Groupie by Lindsay Hyken, an endurance athlete who also happens to be a 40-something mom and full-time worker. So if you're trying to figure out how you can be a weekend warrior and be incredibly fit and still live a normal life, she's going to tell you. She's going to tell you what motivates her to do that. It's an interesting listen. Just give it a try. That's it. Thank you for listening. When we get to our next podcast, Will Blackman will be joining me, and we will start to look at the offseason and the draft when it comes to the NFL, who we expect to be at the top, who we expect to be making big moves, where is the heart of the talent in this year's NFL draft. All of that in our next podcast. In the meantime, thanks for listening.